Cow. It's outside the fence.
Huh.
I'm not just calling out random cows. Like, that's a danger cow.
That's a danger cow. Danger cow. Just in case you didn't know, I'm Brian.
And I'm Matthew.
And this is Road Trip Recap.
Spoilers up ahead, as today we are going to be talking about the Bugs episode of Supernatural.
We're also going to be taking a look at some real-life curses.
Oh boy. All right.
Let's hit the road.
Let's go. Our episode today opens up in Oasis Plains, Oklahoma, where we have some construction workers doing their construction thing. You got Travis and Dustin. Dustin falls through a sinkhole and kind of messes up his leg a little bit, so Travis goes to get something to try to get him out, and in the process, Dustin just gets swarmed by bugs. They just kind of get all up inside his head, and just that's it for old Dustin.
Not a great way to, like, there are no real good ways to go on this show, but, like, I think eaten by Wendigo might be a little bit better than swarmed by brain-eating bugs.
Well, that's debatable, because the Wendigo will sometimes, like, draw it out. He, like, takes them prisoner and all that. Some of the quicker ways, yeah, that's fine, but yes, this is definitely slower.
It's not a fun way. Then
we cut to Sam and Dean. We learn, learning a little bit more about how they fund themselves, hustling pool, credit card scams, stuff like that. Here they learn about the death of poor Dustin, and it's been attributed to basically like human mad cow disease. But it's just not adding up, so they go to investigate.
Severe onset human mad cow disease.
In the process of investigating, they pose as nephews to Dustin. And, you worked with Uncle Dusty? Trying to get some more information from Travis, and it's just not adding up. If he had human mad cow disease, there would have been signs before. It was just, boom, he's gone. They investigate the hole that he fell into, and Sam finds some beetles down there. So they're getting a couple of clues to start off with on what might have actually happened. From here, Sam and Dean talk to Larry Pike. He's the developer of this new community, and this is one of the first instances of them trying to get information from somebody and somebody thinking that they're partners instead of brothers. This is something that kind of reoccurs throughout some of the earlier episodes, but this is one of our first examples of it. After talking to Larry, Dean sees a sign for free food, and so they're having kind of like an open house, and so he wants to stop in to, do some more research where there's free food.
Naturally.
Well, at this open house, they meet Joni, who is Larry's wife, and they also meet Linda. Linda Bloom was actually played by Carrie Genzel, I believe. I don't know if I'm saying her last name correctly. We actually see her later on in season 11, where she plays Linda, but another Linda. It's spelled slightly different, and her last name in this one is Berman. Mm-hmm. In the later episode, she actually plays the mother of a child with an imaginary friend who has been murdered. The imaginary friend, not the child.
Yeah, no, I remember that episode.
So this is another one of those reoccurring actors, but playing a different character later on. At the same time, Sam meets Matt, who is Larry's son, and he's trying to scare Linda with the spider and everything. So just doing as kids do. Here, after doing some research, Dean finds out that there's been another individual that has been killed recently, and he died from a lot of bee stings. And so there's some sort of a pattern where there's insects involved in all of these.
Bees? Which is one of my favorite Cards Against Humanity cards. It's just bees, ?
So here they're developing a theory that someone might be controlling the insects. And it's, Sam is like Willard, which if you're not familiar with it, Willard is a movie starring Crispin Glover where he controls rats to kill people for him. So that's the connection to that. So if you were unawares. Anyways.
Insect telepathy. Sam
and Dean take an opportunity to squat in an empty house because it's a new community going up, so most of the houses are still for sale. And, Dean really wants to try out the steam shower, which I hear are awesome. I, never really experienced.
Same.
but I hear they're pretty great. So from here we cut over to Linda, who is at her house, and she finds a spider in her hair, and is a little disturbed by that, and then goes to take a shower, and then finds a number of spiders in her shower, and has the reasonable reaction that I believe most people would of running through glass to get away. Which, knowing a lot of people and their reactions with spiders, again, that is a reasonable reaction.
Some folks would probably rather run through glass than have to deal with the spider.
Well, she doesn't make it.
No.
Cow. It's outside the fence.
Huh.
I'm not just calling out random cows. Like, that's a danger cow.
That's a danger cow. Danger cow.
At this point, Sam and Dean go to talk to Matt because he had scared Linda with the spider before. There was spiders all over, which the spider that they found by where she died looked like one of those like plastic ring spiders from Halloween. But I'm gonna let that go.
That is actually one thing that I was thinking about talking about too as we get later into the episode, is that like part of my brain when I first saw the episode was like they almost looked more like totems than they did like amulet pieces, rather than they actually looked like insect carcasses. So I at least when I first initially saw it, that was kind of my rationale behind it. I'm like, oh, it's like supposed to be like this symbolic thing that they're finding, and then and whether or not that actually plays into it, I don't know.
So they talked to Matt. He didn't have anything to do with it, and he's kind of the freak of the family. He likes bugs, and Dad just wants him to be normal. And then Sam can kind of relate to Matt in this, as he's been kind of the freak of his family. So from here, Matt takes Sam and Dean over to where insects have been congregating. So he's like, I've noticed also things have been a little weird, like this has been going on. Where they've been congregating, they find some bones. So Sam and Dean make an appointment with a professor to find out kind of what it is they may have found. During this part where they're heading to the appointment, we get some more of the Winchester family drama, where we're talking a little bit more about Sam feeling like the freak of his family, as he is referenced as being kind of like the blonde chick from the Monsters. Which, again, for the reference on that show, the Monsters is a show about basically like a family of monsters, and throughout there is a time where their niece, I believe, comes to live with them, who is just a normal girl. She's a normal blonde-haired girl, so she's in that show the freak because she's normal, where they're all different types of monsters and everything. So Sam is the normal person in a family of freaks, basically. Talking to the professor, they find out that the bones are possibly Native American, so they go in search of one of the Native American tribes, and they talk to Joe Whitetree. And one thing about Joe Whitetree, he knows liars. So Dean's trying to, spin a story on what they're doing. He's just like, nope, you're lying. And then, Sam steps forward and he's like, look, we're just trying to get information on this. I like him. He doesn't lie. We learn a story about the cavalry coming in and just murdering Native Americans. And they came in doing raids day after day after day. And by the 6th day that they came in, they just killed everybody that was in this area. And so there's basically just been a curse where anybody in that area, by the 6th day, everyone's gonna die. So Sam and Dean look into when the first person died, and it started on the equinox. And it
Which
stated...
we just had. Yeah.
It's stated by Sam and Dean even that you don't break curses, you get out of their way. So there's really no stopping this one. So they need to try to get the Pike family out of there before tonight, which is the 6th day where everybody's going to die. Dean calls in and tries to be Travis from earlier, saying that there's some issues they need to get out of the area. But since he used the name, Larry is familiar with people working on the area and was like, I just talked to him. You're not him. Who are you? Well, that failed.
Yeah, that didn't work.
So then they call up Matt. And
He's not having luck with the lion thing in this episode.
Definitely not.
No.
So Sam calls up Matt and is like, hey, you got to get your family out of there. Do whatever you need to do. And then Dean's like, don't tell them the truth. That's not going to work. Fake like you have appendicitis. So they get to the house and they're still there. they go to investigate, and Matt tried telling them the truth, and it didn't work. And he's like, come on.
Appendicitis, man.
Come on. At this point, there is a swarm of insects off in the distance, so it's kind of obvious that there are insects swarming. So Sam and Dean come inside, and they try to, like, barricade themselves in. These insects, they're sneaky insects. They cut the phone lines, and they cut the power. They know what they're doing. No help is coming. So it's stated that it's about midnight when Sam and Dean show up. And, of all the problems that I have, like, this is my main problem with this episode, is that they, in my opinion, don't do a great job on showing the passage of time. Basically, just what they get to is they just need to try to last until sunrise. So we get some bees breaking in, and they're swarming, and Dean finds his, I like how it's actual bug spray, but he's using it as a flamethrower anyways, so it's just like, well, any of it that doesn't burn is still gonna work. So
fire is a little bit more, like, immediately effective than bug spray is, though.
I just find it humorous that he got actual bug spray to use it. He could have used any aerosol, as a flamethrower, but it had to be bug spray. Anyways, as the bees were swarming, they actually used real bees for filming on this, and they had, like, it was something crazy, like 40,000 bees or something like that, but they didn't show up on filming, so they had to CGI the bees in anyways. And
you think you would, like, test that first, but oh well.
Reportedly, the first person to be stung was Dean. And Sam found that hilarious until he sat on a bee and then got stung himself. That's not part of the episode. That's just a little bit of side information I found. So they run upstairs, barricade themselves in the attic, and everything seems to be passing in real time based off of the way that they edited the sequence.
Yep.
So they run inside, Dean grabs some bug spray, uses it as a flamethrower, that doesn't work, they go upstairs, barricade the attic, and the sun's up. I mean, maybe I read that wrong earlier, maybe it was Oasis Plains, Alaska, I don't know. Sunrise could be at 12:15 in the morning. I'm here to judge.
Yeah.
That's the main issue I have with this episode. The rest of it I thought played out fine. So then we get to the end of our episode. Family's okay. They're happy. They're healthy. Matt, no longer into insects. He's getting rid of those. And here, I get into my head canon again. He's like, you know what? Not into insects anymore, but I just dealt with a curse. I'm going to find religion. And he becomes religious. Religious enough to be able to be a vessel. Because Matt is played by Tyler Johnston, who we later see as Samandriel, the wiener on a stick angel that Dean refers to as Alfie.
Oh wow, he grew up.
Kids do that. But if you go back and you watch it, yeah, that's Alfie right there. Yeah. What do we know about curses?
We have a lot of them. There have been curses going all the way back to biblical times, as God has, in the Bible, has cursed various different cities, various different people. I mean, if we look at Job, who was cursed essentially by God, more cursed by the devil, but you have curses that have been essentially going through a long period of time. Curses have been used to kind of explain any amount of just general misfortune that seems to befall sometimes a person, sometimes a place. You've got places like the Bermuda Triangle that were thought to be cursed, as it was like, making ships and planes disappear. But the one that I really wanted to talk about, and it's probably one of the most famous curses, is the curse of King Tut's tomb.
Okay. I've heard of this one.
Yep. Where a group of archaeologists uncovered King Tut's tomb, and while they were waiting for their rich benefactor to come down and actually open the tomb, they started reading all the different signs. The lead archaeologist, as a matter of fact, at one point was informed that his pet canary had been eaten by a cobra that had snuck into his room, and took that as a very bad sign that maybe they shouldn't open the tomb.
As you would.
They decide to ignore it, and they end up just busting the tomb open to get into King Tut's tomb and remove a lot of different artifacts from the tomb, a lot of different precious jewels, gold, and the like. Well, during this time, at some point, the rich benefactor, after exploring King Tut's tomb, cut himself while shaving. He got a mosquito bite on his face while shaving, which then became infected, and he died of what is thought to be a combination of blood poisoning and pneumonia afterwards. This is not the only amount of tragedy that has befallen after opening King Tut's tomb. Several other family members of the rich benefactor ended up dying, as well as other archaeologists, and as well as other visitors to King Tut's tomb would suddenly come down with mysterious illnesses or have some sort of unfortunate event happen and befall them and their family, which then was beginning to be publicized and, I guess, fantasized by the press at the time as the curse of King Tut, which then only fueled more and more tourism to people going to the tomb, and then more and more people having things befall them.
Sure.
Now, there really isn't what you would call a cure for a curse.
Right.
You don't stop it, you just get out of its way. Although in 1995, after the death of another prominent archaeologist and Egyptologist, doctors started to take a look at what they thought was causing these curses. Was there actually a curse, or was there a scientific explanation? And they have been able to find a lot of different bacteria, mold, and other diseases that would infest the wraps of the mummies.
Okay.
And so as you would come into basically an entirely sealed off tomb, very little air getting in there,
Sure.
no airflow whatsoever, you suddenly crack it open, the dust starts flying everywhere, you're now inhaling all these dust particles, and that is what is thought to be actually causing a lot of the disease, a lot of the death that is befalling visitors to these Egyptian tombs.
I don't know if that guy was shaving inside the tomb, though.
He was not shaving inside the tomb. However, the pneumonia could be caused by the dust particles floating through the air. Now, the blood poisoning one, I don't know. That could be chalked up to bad luck, but that could also be chalked up to what a lot of folks still believe is the curse of King Tut, causing a lot of archaeologists to have a little bit of apprehension about wanting to go into a tomb after it's been opened. But it very well could have been about just trying to keep grave robbers out, as people had put curses across tombs, and it was more preying upon superstitions of the day and then feeding into superstitions to this day. There have also been thoughts about the same thing, Native American burial grounds. I was not able to find very many. There have been famous cases of them, but there's not a lot of really good information regarding them. But they have made its way into our vernacular and into kind of our thought process as we look at movies like Poltergeist, in which case, spoiler alert, there's an entire, again, subdivision that has now been put on top of an old graveyard, and they didn't move the bodies, they just moved the headstones.
You moved the headstones, but you didn't move the bodies.
And so now you have this curse that even with a psychic coming in and being able, this house is clean. Even after, love her, even after being able to clean the house, the ghosts are able to just keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back until it finally just consumes the entire house. Literally consumes the entire house.
Which, I want to say, didn't they use actual skeletons for the filming of that, which then adversely theoretically affected like cast and crew on that? That
is the rumor, is that there have been several what are thought to be cursed movies. The movie The Omen was thought to be cursed simply because dealing with the subject matter. There were several deaths that were tied in with The Omen that some of them were even eerily tied in with some of the deaths that happened in the film, where someone was decapitated during a automobile accident. But the Poltergeist one was never fully corroborated, although there was the unfortunate death of the young child star that was one of the main leads in the film, passed away a few years after the movie was filmed. But there was rumors circulating the entire time that they had actually used real bones, and so now the movie was actually haunted. I haven't been able to find anything that really corroborates that story, but it's become so part of the lexicon of our cultural thought that it's going to be hard to figure out if there is any truth to the rumor, or if it's simply a rumor that's gained enough traction that most people think of it as truth. But curses is now something that we use. We use it in just our day-to-day. Oh, this is cursed. Oh, this is cursed. For example,
this is cursed. That is cursed.
When we were filming the Bloody Mary episode, it took us 3 tries to try and get that filmed, and not because of any issues on preparation on our part. It simply had to do with various different breakdowns happening throughout the entirety of the episode as we were trying to get it filmed. And so after a while, it became our cursed episode, or at least I called it cursed because I had to keep revisiting that stupid episode. And so curses have just kind of become part of our vernacular. It's nothing that we really explain. It's just something that, oh, this is a bad luck.
So, following all that, this is one that you haven't necessarily touched on, which I'd like to, because I've heard of and looked into this one a little bit, and this is one that potentially has been beaten, but it also connects with a straight Native American curse, and that's the curse of the president.
Oh, yes.
Did you want to touch on that one, or?
With that one, yeah, it does seem to have been broken, where it was every 50 years or so, a president, every 20 years, thank you.
Every president that was elected in a year ending in 0.
Yep. Then we'll suddenly just pass away while in office, whether it was an assassination, whether it was a heart attack. I believe that was Taft.
So we got doing the research here that Brian's doing, because I'm driving. The following presidents died in office.
We have William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Abraham Lincoln, James A. Garfield, William McKinley, Warren G. Harding, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and John F. Kennedy.
And then the next one that would have been up on that list was Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
The actor?
The actor?
Which, supposedly from an article that I saw years ago, his wife was really into astrology and occultish type stuff, because she was aware of this curse. And the story goes that she had a lot of people brought in to try to break this curse. And then he was shot while in office, but he survived. And that seemed to have broken the curse, where the next president in line that was elected in a year that ended in 0 was George W. Bush. And I believe there was a grenade that was thrown at him, but somebody wrapped something around it to where it didn't actually set it to go off.
Didn't actually go boom.
They wrapped it too tightly. He also had a shoe thrown at him.
Also, yes.
But
the shoe one I remember.
The other one, I just as I was just reading stuff about this, that one came up. But he did not die in office, and then so presumably that is broken, which is good, because we're at another election year with a 0. So if it had not been broken, then we'd be looking for another death in office. We don't want that.
No, not at all. But yeah. Then we also have the various different sporting curses that seem to be following with the Bears. Was it the Bears? Shoot, no, the Cubs. Other Chicago team. But,
the Little Bear.
Yeah, no, Little Bear. But the Cubs, which also seems to have been broken with them winning the World Series recently. So it's not so much that curses are broken, it's more of bad luck stints are broken, or that curses give enough power to someone's thought process that it's it almost can sometimes lock people in. When I was in theater, it was never much of a curse, but it was more I had to constantly had little things to do in order to stop myself from befalling bad luck. And it wasn't so much that actually bad luck would befall me if I did it, it's that's what helped me get me focused and helped keep me in my head. And sometimes curses are the things that maybe keep people in their head oh, it can't be done, it can't be done. And with enough negative thinking, sometimes things can't be done.
I don't know if that necessarily applies to the presidential one, but
No. Well, that one, no, not so much. But curses is such a broad spectrum of how it affects our psychology, how it affects how we look at the world, things like that. That it can be pretty all-encompassing on how it's like if someone just died, unfortunately, then somebody's cursed. My favorite baseball team isn't winning. Well, then they must be cursed. So yes, it doesn't seem like this episode was as cursed. But
well, I guess.
I think that wraps it up for today.
All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode. So until next time, stay safe, buckle up, and
We got work to do.